A new month, a new state of Starloader. We are in October 2022 now, a year after the last one. I'm Geolect, by the way. It's a typical fashion of having a monthly release schedule and then to do something pretty much every 3-4 months. And for State of Starloader, it's every year now. And well, we have a bunch of topics that have built up over the years. What to expect in the future, what I have been up to in the past. And the first two topics I find the most important because they are actually things that have been actually released to some degree, which are the Starloader launcher and the Starloader API, then Gallimulator multiplayer, and then the open source save game format, SML and Stardust, our deobfuscation efforts, and the build chain. Now we'll begin with the Starloader launcher. We are currently in development as the Starloader launcher 4.0.0 update. It's a large refactor which has mostly happened already, and it's currently in the nightly builds phase, waiting more or less until someone decides to publish it into 4.0.0 form. Perhaps it stays in the nightly builds form, so it will continue to use the calendar versioning that we currently employ. The good thing about the nightly builds thing is that it's much easier to use bleeding edge versions of the Starloader launcher. The Starloader launcher, I very often expected it to be a thing of the past, to be deprecated. It was deprecated for a long time, but it survived. It's not going anywhere because it's pretty stable, but it has its flaws, I have to admit that. And that was the cause it was deprecated. But most of these flaws, I'd say, were solved in the 4.0.0 refactor, which uses a Stardust-like launching system, which basically means that if you invoke the Starloader launcher with Java 8 runtime, it will automatically download and install Java 17, I believe, which means that the entire modding ecosystem that's mostly built around Java 11, to some degree Java 17 these days, it's still going to continue to work for you because Stardust-like launching systems will automatically upgrade your Java version. And the UI was also thrown out of the window, which means that the Starloader launcher is almost invisible these days, so it's not going to be much of a pain to use it. The second topic is the Starloader API, probably the most prominent and central modding API for Gallimulator, the only one pretty much. And it currently has a 2.0.0 refactor in progress, which has large amounts of code was removed due to things like the UI API hell, which is pretty much only things where stuff was deprecated, and it's going to be removed in the future. But because it was deprecated into 2.0.0 refactor, it can be removed at any point of time. It needn't be the 3.0.0 refactor. So as soon as an API becomes unmaintainable, it gets thrown out of the window. which is to 2.0.0 refactor, adds to Canvas API, which I must say compared to the old Screen API that's on its way to deprecation, the Canvas API is much better. The Actor API was removed, the old one. There's currently not a replacement in progress and hasn't already been worked on, but it's eventually going to be added a proper Actor API, but this could take a long time and might not actually happen into Starloader API version 2, but later on, perhaps in 2024 or 2025, who knows. And that's the finish date of this refactor can range anything from now a couple of months to a few years actually, because really there's a lot of things that need to be done, and the Starloader API version 2 release is pretty much blocking on the fact that its build system, SL Brochure, doesn't support FTP Maven repositories. But as soon as we need to publish our version 2 release, FTP Maven repositories will be added, but we'll see about that when it's going to be needed. Gallimulator multiplayer. I've tested already in the last state of Starloader. There have been multiple reinfect prototypes since then, and sadly I've deemed Gallimulator multiplayer to be completely unfeasible without enormous amounts of effort being spent into it. The reason being that Gallimulator makes use of a lot of pseudo-random numbers, and that also in parallel state. That being said, that the random number generated will be accessed by multiple threads, which means that the randomness cannot be eliminated, and as such desynchronization issues will arise, and these desynchronization issues cannot be solved with either excessive amounts of bandwidth or excessive amounts of development time, which cannot be spent, and as such I must say that the efforts are unfeasible. And then there's another thing that was announced last year, and it's the open source safe game format. The groundwork for the open source safe game format was laid in SL API 2.0.0, which already has more or less intermediary solution to SL API boilerplate system, which basically is the vanilla safe game structure with an added header, and later on a proper replacement will be added for the non-header parts. That is for things that are encoded by the game itself. Mod metadata and things as such are already handled by the Starloader API boilerplate safe game format. There is, however, not a lot of efforts being sunk into it right now, but should eventually happen given enough time. So also a few months to a few years until we see a new open source safe game format for Gallimulator, which should hopefully be a lot more robust, perhaps even not, who knows.